Dungeons & Dragons is one of my favourite games, but a terrible monster known as inconsistency plagues the communication strategy of its proprietor. Let's light a torch and enter the dungeon together. Consistency in integrated marketing communications is the practice of ensuring that the messages espoused by a communications plan are not contradictory across their execution. When consistency is not maintained through a company's communicative channels, the dissonance can be detracting for consumers. When the inconsistency involves concerns of ethics, consumers can even judge companies as hypocritical or unfulfilling of corporate social responsibility perceptions. Dungeons & Dragons is owned by Wizards of the Coast, or WotC for short. WotC bears a challenging history with inconsistency in its integrated marketing communications between the channels of printed self-publication and online marketing. WotC has looked to establish their brand online as inclusive and working to encourage diversity and equity throughout its staff and products. Online media partners like Critical Role that play and stream Dungeons & Dragons perpetually espouse inclusivity in their communities. However, this has led to a clash between WotC's progressive digital corporate identity versus the depictions of racism and discrimination in its published printings, as well as the negative leaked communications surrounding their recent business practices. Because D&D requires the publishing of source books to play the game product, WotC's communications extend to these publications as part of its presence in media communications. The conflict has arisen when the purported ideals of the company have clashed with the content that is published in these source books, such as depictions of fantastical creatures like orcs being inherently evil, or the race known as the Hadozi having poorly managed associations with black slavery. This is not the first time that WotC's print channel has negatively contrasted against the values it advocates elsewhere. Recently, in WotC's added additions to its catalogue, it added content warnings to a series of legacy publications involving insensitive depictions of East Asian, Middle Eastern, and Mesoamerican cultures, rather than removing them entirely from their past publications' downloads. WotC is currently owned by Hasbro, who has shifted the company in a plan for it to become one of its largest profit generators. Unfortunately, in a move that would readjust the monetary and creative policy between WotC and third-party creators, the company recently released a drafted new version of the Open Gaming License that was met with sincere criticism, as it acted completely against the company's digitally espoused value of fair equity. Consumers were enraged when this idea was leaked, sparking mass unsubscription of the D&D Beyond digital platform in protest. How has WotC dealt with these issues? In a more recent publication, all mentions of creatures being inherently evil were removed. Hadozi have now had their role in lore history rewritten after a cultural sensitivity consultant was recruited by WotC. Finally, the OGL debacle ended with WotC declaring as much of their D&D product that they could would be moved to Creative Commons, and the next edition of the OGL would not be so restrictive against third-party content creators. Ultimately, WotC will hopefully slay this incongruent dragon of inconsistency in their messaging across media channels, but until then, it's time to roll for initiative.